Hello and welcome to another edition of Talos Install Fest, Talos Linux Install Fest. We've been installing Talos on pretty much as many environments as we can find. And it's really fun for me going through it, understanding what the environments are like, what they offer for features, and hopefully fun for people that are doing it for the first time, because most of the people that are doing these installs with us are first-time Talos users. And so we're trying to understand from them what's good, what's bad, where it can improve, and really just kind of understand kind of the mindset of, sorry, I'm getting over being sick, a mindset of what it's like to run a Linux distribution that's just for Kubernetes. And so today on the show, we have Mohammed, who is going to come run Talos, and we're actually going to do it locally on his Mac with a software called UTM, which I forget what it stands for. It's a virtualized environment for Macs, specifically for M1s. Does it stand for something? I'm sure it does. We'll pull them up in just a second. I just wanted to remind anyone, if you're following along live, please leave a comment. Let us know what you're doing, where you're installing Talos. If you're watching this afterwards, feel free to leave comments. Also want you to check out TalosCon coming up in September in London. We have a bunch more talks, customers, different things to learn about Kubernetes and Talos, specifically in data centers and edge, but not just limited to that. So feel free to check out setarolabs.com/TalosCon, where you can sign up. It's free. It's a one-day event. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to share my screen as well, but also pull up Mohammed here. Where is the share button? Hold on a second. And there we go. How's it going, Mohammed?
Hello. Nice, pretty nice. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, and you're joining from Sweden, right?
Yeah. The most north part of Europe.
Yeah, and I was we were just talking about your sun. It's like 9 p.m. for you as we're recording, and the sun's
Yes.
just about to set.
Yeah.
So if you live up north, you might be familiar with that in the northern latitudes or longitudes. So yeah, I'm closer to the equator in Southern California. So but let's talk about UTM, because I know you said that you're going to do this with UTM, which is like a virtualization tooling for Mac, right?
Yeah, it's a hypervisor for Mac. Actually, I was trying to search for because it was my first time to run a virtual machine on my Mac. I normally use Linux and servers, and so that was basically I was searching and I had only two options for MacBook M series, which was VirtualBox and also UTM. But UTM seems to be more stable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never used UTM before. I looked at it a long time ago because I wanted it to work on my iPad, because they actually have an iOS version of UTM, which I think is really cool. But it does require rooting the device, right? Like, so yeah, jailbreak the device to get it installed. I am hopeful that the new App Store requirements will allow me to maybe sideload this some way, because it'd be very handy to have some real virtual machines, even if they're virtual, like, virtualized hardware. It's not x86 architecture or whatever, but like, hey, maybe we could run the ARM version.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned you DM'd me last night saying that you got it installed, and then you just went ahead and installed a cluster with Omni.
Yeah, I was trying to do that to see what I'm going to experience tonight, and I was really curious about because I just had a good presentation on Talos and Omni about a month ago, so I wanted to try it, and we don't use it actually these days, but so I gave it a try to see how it's working. It was pretty nice.
Yeah, you
So
mentioned there was at the Kubernetes party, right, for the
yeah,
10-year anniversary. There was a presentation and someone was talking about Talos there.
yes, right.
Okay, so that was your first exposure to it. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and see what it's like. Let's create a couple of VMs and get them bootstrapped and ready to go.
Yeah.
See how this works. I'm going to pull up your screen.
Right.
Okay, so you signed up for an Omni account here.
Yes.
And
So
you...
yeah, I signed up. Actually, I was following this documentation here, And also, I think it was, sorry, it was in here, getting started with Omni. So I just installed all of, maybe I can just come from, for the network access. So it should be, I have all of the access. It's the virtual machine on my Mac. And then I installed this.
The Talos control. Yep.
Yeah, Talos control, and also Cube control, and also Omni control, but I didn't use them actually.
And actually,
But
yeah, that's an interesting point. We haven't shown off Omni control on any of these installs. And Omni control is really just a control interface for the Omni environment, but you can have multiple clusters, you can have multiple users, you have all these different things that you're doing that aren't Linux based and they're not even Kubernetes based inside of an Omni account. And so it's really meant to kind of manage that side of it. But there are some things that we could do, like we could show a template. We can show that because it's kind of a neat way of showing off how you could automate some of this stuff. So maybe we'll go down that route.
yeah. So then, and then I was just reading this part, which basically says that when you just logged in, here there's a button called download the installation media. Let's download one of the ARM-based ARM64.
Can you make your window a little bigger? I can't read it.
Okay, and also maybe something like this.
Yeah,
How about now?
That's good.
Okay. Okay, ARM.
So probably want like the ISO of that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then I think that's it. Should I add anything else?
No, I mean, so those are the extensions, which are just kind of like extra services or tools or different software you might want. And this is actually using, if you go to a new browser tab and go to factory.talos.dev, that is just the same stuff we can do here, which is without an Omni account. Like you can get what type of Linux or Talos build you want. If you want it for like a Raspberry Pi or a cloud server or bare metal, in this case, it would be kind of a bare metal instance. So you can click next. You select the version of Talos you want with 175. You also get the alpha builds here, which you don't get inside of Omni by default. So you can click next there, and then you get architecture for ARM.
And do we want secure boot?
No, most of the VM platforms don't support secure boot because secure boot is part of like a TPM platform. So you need to have a trusted platform module to be able to like put keys into it and everything. So most of the VM environments don't support that.
Okay.
Next. And then here's those same extensions. And again, the extensions are just like extra drivers for things, extra supports for different services. There's a Tailscale one that's pretty popular. I usually recommend if you have like an Intel chip or an AMD chip, you should download the microcode for that CPU as well, because it'll probably run a little better. But you don't need anything here. The default should work, especially in a VM environment.
Yeah, cool.
And this last one is the customizations. And this is actually the thing that Omni does for you. So if you go back to your Omni tab, there's an additional kernel arguments here, which also is like, hey, how do you do you want to set things? Because Talos, you can configure things in Talos from the kernel arguments. But it also adds like a join token when you download it, even though it doesn't show there. When you download the media from Omni, it's giving you those join tokens, so the machine will connect back into Omni. But you don't have to go through this to get the argument. So if you hit cancel here, and on the right side, it says copy kernel parameters. That's the same thing as you would be getting. So if you go back to the image factory, you can paste that in here in customization. So it's the same thing that you're getting from Omni by default. And this is how your instance, when it boots, is configured to say, oh, I need to go contact Omni to go say where, like, what machine am I and where am I coming from? And this gives you like the join token, your endpoint. So if you're running Omni on-prem, you can get those same sort of things. So you can run Omni, behind a firewall, and the machines need to connect back to it so you can control them. So this is how it's working. And so when you do it through Omni, you get that by default. You could do it through factory as well. So and that usually is a bit of a secret as well. The not the join token, but like there is a join token in here which if someone else boots a machine with your join token, like their machine shows up in your Omni. So it's something that you don't really want to like public, like we're on a stream right now. We can reset it and you can go back after the stream to say like, oh, actually I don't want someone to randomly throw a machine in my Omni instance. So those are things that are kind of secrets. You can't do a whole lot by sending a machine into someone else's Omni, but it is something that you don't really want to publicize.
Right. So then,
so you can click next there,
next.
and then you can get your ISO. So this has three different things. One is that top portion is customization. So if you wanted to create a patch inside of Omni that had this configuration, which is literally what we just pasted in there, you could set that. Again, in Omni, it doesn't matter because everything already has that patch. But you can download your ISO. You can also scroll down and you'll see the iPXE endpoints. So if you have machines that can iPXE from the network, automatically, you could just iPXE to that endpoint and they'll automatically get this configuration.
Yeah. And but now we want the ISO one, right?
Right.
So I just clicked on that.
And it builds these basically on the fly. I mean, they're not, you don't have any extra extensions, so there's no extra layers for it. It's just baking in those kernel args into the image so that when it boots, it's ready to go.
Done. So let's move on to UTM. So it's quiet. Nice here. So we want to virtualize, and it's other operating system, I would say.
Is it not Linux? Does it do something different for?
I didn't try with that. Maybe we can try with this one.
Boot from a kernel image.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because we could download. I don't know if that. Okay.
So should I boot from this one?
I don't know. I mean, we could download the image separately, but I think since you have the ISO, it should.
Maybe we could try I can also download the other ones.
Let's just try it from the ISO first and then see what it does. Again, I've never used UTM before, so I'm wondering what it would do different there.
How much memory do we want? 4 gig?
We'll start with 4 gigs is fine because we'll make this a control plane node and we can join machines after.
And 2 cores.
Sure.
Okay. How much data does it need? I guess I have.
We're not going to pull down any actual workload images, so you could make it 8 gigs. It's probably thin provisioned anyway, so it's not going to actually take up 64 gigs of space on your hard drive.
Yeah. Okay. And
we don't need a shared directory. We're not going to mount anything.
Yeah. And let's call it control plane.
Sure. Or just
And done, I guess. Save. Run it.
Yeah, there's the grub menu. We're off to the good start here.
Yeah, but I didn't do anything. It's just doing it for itself.
And so, I mean, at this point, you're connected, right? Like you have your IP address. It's already booted. If you go back to Omni, you'll have a machine there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this one.
It is. And then we're going to have 4 gigs of RAM, 2 cores, 8 gig hard drive. We're all set.
Yeah.
So go ahead and let's make a cluster.
Great. Create a cluster. Okay, so
why don't you go ahead and from the top there, get the older version of Kubernetes. There's a drop down with the Kubernetes version. Yeah, let's just put a 129.6 on there.
Okay.
Yeah, just because. So we can show an upgrade.
Yeah.
And then you can click the CP for control plane.
Yeah.
This is also, if you want to, click on the little like puzzle piece there.
This one?
Yeah. that gives you those extensions that we had before. So we don't have to download the image with the extensions in it. So we can say, hey, when we're installing, we want these additional extensions, right? Because like if you have 18 different machines, they're all different types, they don't all need the same extensions. And so this is another place where you can set those at install time. You can close this piece and then click the gear next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And these are patches. These are, because everything is API driven, you could set, like, you can, in that host name, which is just an example of, what you might want to say, you could call this UTM1 or whatever, or Talos 1, whatever. You can set a host name.
Yeah. And then save.
Yep. And so when you actually do the install, it's going to set that as the host name of the machine, because it's just an API.
Yeah.
Go ahead and create that cluster. This is a not a warning, but it's a, hey, by the way, you only have one machine in this cluster.
Yeah.
By default, we don't allow control plane machines to run workloads. Do you want to set the patch to allow the control plane to run workloads too? So we could say yes on this. We're not going to run any workloads, but it just is like a handy little tool.
Mm-hmm.
While that installs, let's go ahead and create another VM or two.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to use another one, or? I mean,
we can use the same. We can use the same image. We can just
okay.
create 2 new UTM machines.
Okay. And virtualize and Linux. And
get that ISO again. You see the machine in the background rebooted. It just did the install.
Mm-hmm.
So we can boot up this one.
And then the other one, maybe.
As long as, if you think your machine can handle 3,
Yeah.
I think we'll be all right.
I have hope.
I saw some questions here. If Omni's capable of setting a static IP from site or range. Yes, that's just a normal Talos config. So you could set that as a patch in the nodes as they're spinning up, or you can set it as kernel parameters. However you're setting your static IP addresses, Talos itself can do that. So Omni has a way to configure those things.
And the second worker is up. Let's get back there.
All right.
Here. And let's see.
So one of them connected. There's our control plane. It got renamed.
Mm-hmm. The next one is...
There's a second one. It's starting to come up. There's the rest of the info.
Yeah.
Let's go back into clusters.
Okay.
Not quite ready yet. It's probably downloading the kubelets or the API server and stuff, the images. If you switch back to the console,
Here?
No, the UTM console.
Okay. Here?
Yeah. Okay. So I see everything on the back window has all the control plane components, the kubelet, scheduler, controller manager. Those all say healthy. Oh, now it says ready true. It just went to true. It was ready false a second ago.
Yeah.
So it probably just finished.
Okay. So
go into there. Now it's running. Cool.
Yeah.
So if you want to add those nodes, so we have those 2 other machines. They're connected in here. On the right-hand side is cluster scaling.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can select both those machines and you can make them worker nodes. I mean, if you wanted them as, control plane, like if you're scaling up or down your cluster, this is where you would do it.
Yeah. I have this habit of making things a bit pretty. Okay. So are we done?
Yep. And now those 2 machines will go through and be installed, and they'll get those patches. They'll do the install to disk so that they'll always reboot and come back to this known state of being part of the cluster.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing we could do here, which is kind of fun, go up on the left-hand side to machine classes.
Oh, machine class.
Yeah. So let's create a machine class here. And let's click on one of your worker nodes, or just one of the, I guess it doesn't matter. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean that. Go back one.
Okay.
Click on one of the tags. So like cores 2, mem 4.
Okay. Course 2. Okay. Oh. Okay. All of them are course 2.
Yeah, they all are because we set them all to that. That's fine. So at the very top, name it. There's a machine class name and just say 2 cores.
Okay. 2 cores.
And then create that machine class.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's go back into the cluster. Oh, those machines are already running.
Yeah.
And then click on nodes on the left side. I think is where it's at. Oh, that's not it. Where am I thinking? Oh, I think it's under cluster scaling. I think I go back to overview.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there is add worker machine sets right at the very that one. And so here we're going to say use machine classes on the checkbox there.
This one?
It's like in the middle of that bar.
Here.
Just to the left of that. Use machine classes is
okay.
Yeah. So now we can say we want to use the 2 cores and you can say use all available machines. Check the box and then update. So now it's an interesting, like we have this class of machines. So if you create a new VM and it joins Omni and it has 2 cores, it matches that label, it'll automatically join this cluster. You don't need to do the scaling. You don't need to do the other components there.
And where does it create this one? On my machine?
No, go into UTM and just boot another machine.
Okay.
Because we already have the ISO that has that configuration to connect back. We're really going to put your computer through some through paces today.
Yeah. Hope it can handle this.
We could also turn off one machine if we want. We could
we could try to see what happens.
If you get disconnected from the stream, I know it will be too much.
And run. And then it automatically goes there, right?
Yeah, so we set that machine class that's going to look for anything that joins that has 2 cores. And you can set those labels can be arbitrary. Like you can create them at the install disk. You could do all sorts of different matching. So it's like I have one for GPU nodes. And so as soon as a node joins that has a GPU, it should join a cluster. And so you can say how many, obviously like any machines that boot that have 2 cores, there you go. It automatically created that and says, okay, it's booting. We're going to provision it automatically because we know it should be in this cluster because we set that machine class. This is a way to like auto scale, right? As if you have AWS machines, you have an on-prem cluster and you say, oh, but I need to auto scale occasionally, right? And I want them to automatically come in and join this cluster. You could have something like cluster autoscaler running in your on-prem environment. And if nodes aren't available or capacity is not available, workloads come in, it'll create an AWS node. AWS node then joins back to Omni, boots off this image, and you have a machine class that says, oh, I'm looking for anything that's AWS, because you can have cloud provider equals AWS, core type, whatever, automatically joins in and reprovisions itself to be part of the cluster. And so once that machine boots up, it's one of those things that are nice where it's like you're not just restricted to the on-prem sort of, oh, I only have bare metal, I can only do this. Like, no, if you need to burst, that's fine. That's already provisioned.
Nice.
And that's something you can do with Omni Control. Omni Control has a cluster templates. I'm trying to remember the exact command. There's a way to download it, and I don't remember exactly right now. Export. Would you name your cluster? Talos default?
Yes.
Yeah. So can you open a terminal?
Yeah, it's already opened.
Sweet.
And maybe I can just zoom in a bit.
Yeah, make it a little bigger for me. Thanks.
Yeah.
So the command is Omni control cluster Omni CTL.
Yeah.
Cluster space template space export and then Talos default.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't install that one.
Oh.
Let's install it.
You can download it from the Omni interface.
Here.
Yep. Go to the home tab. And the Omni control on the far right on the bottom.
Yeah.
That also gives you the Omni config, which you'll want.
It's this one. Also, does it have the config itself? Or
No, it doesn't. That's just the binary. Yeah, grab the config too.
Okay. So let's go to the downloads. Okay.
So export Omni config all in caps, one word.
Export.
Export space Omni config all one word, capitalize, like cube config.
Yeah.
Equals that Omni config file.
What was it?
I think it was called Omni config YAML.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll just have your settings for your endpoints.
Okay.
And now Omni control should work. It's chmod plus X.
Yeah.
You'll need to dot slash. It's not in your path.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Okay. Right, it's working.
Sweet.
Okay.
Oh, it's Macs don't allow binaries from the internet to run. You have to.
I have to
allow it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember where that setting is.
Privacy and security, maybe.
Where is this?
Or should I just?
Oh, so there's a command line tool for it. They have an extended attribute called quarantine. Okay.
Okay.
Here, let's see. Here's a private chat with the command.
Yeah.
Sudo x adder. Yep.
Nice.
And that we'll just need to set the path. Let's see if it works now. Hey, there we go. All right. So what was our? It was export Omni control cluster
Template export.
Export. Yeah. And then the cluster name.
Like this.
Yep. Oh, do a -C for the cluster name, or before the cluster name.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should pop you over to authenticate, and now you can jump back to the terminal There you go. That's what it looks like. So you could save this out to a file. You could, redirect it. But this is essentially what you're getting from Omni to say, like, what does a cluster actually look like? What does a cluster template look like? And you have a kind cluster, Kubernetes version, Talos version, and then the machines, right? So you have this machine class. One is set. They have a control plane. You have your worker. You have your worker 2. I think if you scroll up just a little bit more, you'll see the machine class match. Yeah, there's your workers. Machine class is 2 cores and unlimited, right? So it's like that's what is needed to kind of get a machine class to be able to join the cluster automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use this template to create new clusters. You can then feed that. You can sync the template back up to Omni to be able to say, oh, I want multiple machine classes, or I need to make multiple clusters look the same. It's not ideal to use like individual machines, right? Because you need the UUID and everything that is going to be different for each one. But if you're using machine classes, you can say, oh, this cluster should be 3 control plane nodes and 5 worker nodes. And you can have those as part of machine classes and say, oh, I want 5 worker nodes from the 8 core pool. And we can create a cluster based on that without needing to go back and forth on like, oh, which machine is this and how is that? I was like, no, I have a pool of resources and we can get them automatically added to these clusters.
Mm-hmm. And could we also do, for instance, auto scaling to add or add a VM, or add a node or remove a node?
Yeah, you could sync this template and remove nodes if you want. Like if you pulled out those machine workers, you could have them be removed from the cluster.
Yeah, but could it be somehow automated? For instance, if, let's say the capacity is like, for instance, 80 less than 80%, just remove one node, for instance, or something like that.
Oh, do you mean like remove machines from the cluster if you're not using them?
Yes.
That's interesting. That would be something that I think would be more part of cluster autoscaler, but
exactly.
Omni's not a cluster autoscaler endpoint because cluster autoscaler has a bunch of different endpoints. If you're running it in Amazon or in a cloud provider, absolutely, that's how it works. Cluster autoscaler would be the thing that scales the nodes up and down by just deleting them. If you're running this on something that you own, like Metal, there's no controller that I know of that would remove them. But you could automate it. Like you could have something call a webhook, right?
Yeah. For cloud providers, I think then there will be cloud controller manager or something like that will handle those things, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So that was just a visualization of like what it looks like to run, the export and everything else. One other thing we could do just to show it is go into the Omni interface again.
Yep.
Go into the cluster. And then on the right side, you have a Talos version upgrade available and a Kubernetes version upgrade available. At the very top, there's little up arrows.
This one
on the sidebar. Yeah. So you could perform the Talos upgrade.
By just clicking on this, or just go here?
Just you can click the up arrow. You could do either. It's update Kubernetes and update and you select your version here. 175 is the latest. And now it's going to go through. You'll see that like middle bar showed up of going 174 to 175 on the Talos upgrade. And it's going to start by downloading the image to the machines. Is going to reboot them because it's image based. So it's going to say, okay, we're going to download it. When you're doing the Kubernetes upgrade, it downloads all the components. So it's going through and saying, oh, I need to get the new API server, the new controller manager, the new kubelets, all those images. It'll download them all first before it starts to do the upgrade in case like internet gets cut out, stuff like that. I said, 90 days to DevOps. But importing existing Talos clusters into Omni is definitely a feature that people are asking for. Because a lot of people have Talos clusters and they're like, I want this to be part of Omni. And we don't have a way to do that right now. But yeah, no, we definitely hear you on that. We don't have to wait for the upgrade to go through. It'll do the control plane first and then go through and do the worker nodes. They'll all, if you go back to the consoles, like you'll see them doing their upgrades, all the normal things you would think of. And that's actually one of the things I found fascinating in having these live streams is talking to people and saying like, yeah, I have a K3s cluster, but I stopped using it because I had to manage Ubuntu. Like, I had to like do all the like normal Linux stuff. That was kind of like a bummer to be like, like I have to go through and upgrade that. And I have to, do more work than I should have to, because all I care about is Kubernetes API. It's like, yep, that's exactly why we're here.
Yeah, nice.
So I don't have anything. I mean, like this was a very uneventful stream as far as everything, mostly working and going through and getting stuff. Was there anything else you wanted to check out or wanted to try?
No, not really. I only have one question regarding eBPF features in Talos. So could we have, for instance, write some random eBPF scripts and run them on Talos nodes or something like that? Would it be even
Yeah,
possible?
I mean, eBPF works. A lot of people use Cilium, which is eBPF based. And there's, as far as I know, there's no like signing for eBPF programs. They're kind of an ad hoc, like, hey, if you can drop it in the right place on the file system, it'll run. So there's no restrictions around that. I mean, writing your own eBPF program might, but I have no idea what the capabilities are. But I haven't heard of anyone having issues with it.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, your machines are still going through upgrades. So
yeah,
they'll get there eventually, but we don't need to burn all of your CPU cycles on your machine. But that was great. I mean, that was, on a local, like, you don't have to do it this way. Like if you have a Linux box or if you have Docker locally, like you can run Talos in Docker as well, because it is just like the init system is just an API. You can do that as well, but it's not, but having full VMs, having full emulation allows you to do things like, rebooting and getting more machines in there and setting different cores. So it's a kind of a different beast to be able to actually play with pretend hardware in a virtualized environment. But yeah.
Nice.
So thanks everyone for joining the live stream and asking questions, and anyone else that watched afterwards. I hope that your installs are doing well as well. So we'll talk to you again soon.